everybody, and welcome to another episode of Machtails from the Cantina. I want to introduce a very special guest. He was a Kickstarter backer, Antonio from New Jersey. And I'm really looking forward to turning the wheel over to him on this episode. So sit back, enjoy, and have a drink along with us.
First off, I just want to say thank you. I was really happy to back the project just because it's one of those things. I'll confess, I'm not a very creative person in general. So anytime I can help support really awesome shows, content producers, I really appreciate more now than ever. So
we would not exist if it wasn't for people like you that want to support the arts, especially now. I mean, you know, now with the pandemic, things are very limited on how we can get the support.
I can only imagine what it's like to try to pivot and all of a sudden use Zoom as your main way to record your content, right?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was not too bad because I wasn't really doing a show at all. I was just recording stuff for Amazon Prime. I always wanted to get into doing a podcast or a video cast or what have you, and Zoom kind of fell into my lap like everybody else with school. My daughter was using it at school, and I'm like, hey, this could be a cool tool for my fun project.
I feel like I've always used it from the last year for work, right? And then all of a sudden, everybody in my household is having, my wife, my little daughter who's 6 years old, Rosie, she's on with her cousins. My wife is talking to her sisters who are out in Texas. And I'm having just regular conversations, whether it's my parents or work. All of a sudden, Zoom is this thing that exists in everybody's life. Now we all work from home and we're all working through Zoom and connecting through Zoom. And it's just such a big, important part of our lives. And and you're like, not panic, but you definitely have, you've seen enough, zombie movies or enough movies in time, you're like, I've seen this before. I've seen this before.
There was part of me where the second weekend or the third weekend, I was like, you know what? I don't want to play Walking Dead anymore.
That's actually really funny. There's a new video game that just came out called Last of Us 2. And it's brutal violence and, really heart-wrenching story. And it's all about the end of the world post-pandemic. And I'm just going, I think I'm going to play Mario Party with my daughter.
Right. Yeah, I noticed too, Netflix, right? The second or third weekend, all the number one, the top 5 streaming movies were all the pandemic movies. And I'm like, why do people want to watch what we're going through right now?
Those are sick people, Chris.
What are you drinking tonight?
Today I'm drinking River Horse Hypnotize Out. Can you see that pretty well?
Yeah. Now, I don't know that one. Is that local?
Yep. It's local. It's Ewing, New Jersey, right outside Trenton, which is our capital. The whole thing there is a river horse is a hippopotamus, and this is hypnotizing. So it's a nice IPA. It's very strong, in the sense that it's about 7.5. It's something that you hang out and sip on over a few minutes versus just kind of Coors Light that you can take down in 10 seconds.
I drank 2 of those strong IPAs yesterday after a couple of Moscow Mules, and I kind of hit a wall last night. When you said you didn't want to record this morning and you wanted to do 6 or 7, I was like, that's even better.
Yeah. Oh, kidding me?
Now the beer I'm drinking tonight is I've already poured it out of my bottle. This is kind of an underground gem that I found. My friend Duffy, who a lot of you guys know, he introduced me to this. This is from Ace Brewing. They make a lot of ciders. They're kind of mass produced, so the quality is good, but it's not necessarily craft brew quality. But the cool thing about this is there's a Tonica twin on this bottle. And this is called Space by Ace, and it's a blood orange cider. The actress, Angela Staines, Staines, probably pronouncing it wrong as I usually do, but Angela's husband, her husband owns Ace Brewing.
Oh, that's cool.
So they made this beer as kind of a tribute to the Tonica twin, not both of them, but just the one. So I thought that was pretty cool. So Star Wars fans, if you're looking for a Star Wars inspired brew, again, Space by Ace, you can probably get them just about anywhere because they're out of California, and you get them at the bigger liquor stores around here.
As someone who's seen your 2 films and expects a 3rd film eventually. No, I'm just joking. But,
oh no, it's expected.
I'm kidding. But like those first 2 films, I'll just say this: I don't have a lot of Star Wars fans that are in my life, in the sense I can count them on my one hand, right? That we grew up playing Knights of the Old Republic and playing, Star Wars D&D basically. And so having people like you or Jimmy Mack and Jason Swank and Rebel Force Radio and just all the people that are connected to that go for the real fans and so forth, is really awesome for me because I don't have another touch point for that. So again, not only getting to like help support those shows, but help support my fandom, because I've never been to like a celebration or anything like that. And I really would like to, but it's not something that I've ever been able to do. So really awesome stuff.
That was the first thing that I realized when I put out the first film many, many moons ago, is that I kind of wanted to show how Star Wars fans are all the same, even though it's impossible for us to all know each other. A lot of people would watch it and they would say, hey, that's me. That's me. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. So it was almost like this virtual community, if you will. So now you're from New Jersey. One of my top 5 favorite bands of all time is from New Jersey.
Yeah.
You want to take a guess who that might be?
I mean, is it Bruce Springsteen?
No, it's maybe not as mainstream. No.
Okay.
Monster Magnet.
Yeah, okay. This is why I'm actually really excited to talk to you, because I like you and Jimmy Mack for one specific reason. They're outside of just Star Wars, right? Like I love Star Wars, but I don't collect Star Wars. I think I have like 7 Funko Pops and a few Legos that my daughter got me into, right? She loves those little bobbleheads, and I love Chewbacca, right? That's my favorite character for whatever reason. I love him. So we have a bunch of Chewbaccas, all different stuff. But what I collect is records. I love music in that sense. I go from Beach Boys to the Beastie Boys to Modest Mouse to White Stripes, right? And I have about 600 records of just like stuff that goes back to Motown, a good amount of punk rock, a lot of mid-90s hip-hop, because that's when I was growing up, right? Like I was in middle school in 96. And then a lot of indie rock today, because that's one of those things that I love. That and baseball.
Yeah, music, baseball, Star Wars, those are definitely my passions.
Growing up, why I'm into music is my dad's into music. He had a record collection. He gave me he gave me some records to start with. Maybe not the prized possessions, but...
Your dad was into music?
Yeah, both my dad and my mom, but definitely my dad. They grew up on stuff like Smokey Robinson to Grateful Dead.
They're obviously probably from New Jersey as well?
Yeah, Newark, New Jersey, where every Italian and Irish kid came in from.
Now, did your parents get a chance, because it's not that far from where you're at, did they get a chance to make it to upstate New York in 1969 for Woodstock?
Give me an F! Give me a U! Give me a C! Give me a K! What's that spell?
No, because my father was getting in trouble at that time with his parents. So, no, but on the other flip side, it's a very funny. An aunt of mine did, and she has stories about it. So that was.
Oh, that's cool. It's funny because I always look at people's hats. I always notice like, oh, okay, you're a Yankees fan.
Yeah.
You're an A's fan. Everybody, I identify people with their baseball hats, and I always identify people like if they're from the East Coast and they're rooted there. It's like, okay, Who in the family tree went to Woodstock?
Yeah, right. Well,
I mean, if it was right there, you know?
For us, it was going to the PNC Performing Arts Center every year to see like The Who or Tom Petty, right? Because that was just like a staple that would continue to happen in our state for whatever reason. And I don't think it's anything like special. It's not like going to see the band at the Fillmore West or whatever, right?
Right,
but
right.
For me, live music or seeing something in person is just so, I don't know, much better. I don't want to say much better because there's some great bands that were just never good live, but I don't know. I really enjoy the live aspect of seeing things.
Yeah, I mean, live. I mean, even, you know, when I catch videos on YouTube, it's not the same. It's more of like a historical document, which is great. And some of the shows that I watch on YouTube, I wasn't around anyway, so it's kind of cool that I could still see that stuff. But what are you missing? A lot of shows this year?
Actually, you know what? No, because I have a 6-year-old and son who's about to turn 1.
What was your first show?
My first show was Billy Joel and Elton John. And to this day, William Joel, as we call him in my household, by his full name, and Elton John are, you know, awesome. And I have a very big appreciation for classic rock.
The first show I ever saw was Joe Satriani. My mom, who was into very, very cool music, she had always inspired my musical direction, I guess, even though I went on my own. Joe Satriani was awesome. That was kind of the show that I wanted to see, but my mom was familiar with him because there was a radio station that used to play him. It's been years since I've listened to Joe.
Certain virtuosos have their place, but they're not the thing that I listen to often.
I always liked him too, because he wasn't an Yngwie Malmsteen where it was like, okay, we know you can play
yeah, right.
at the speed of light. You know, now the first shredder, in my opinion, Alvin Lee from 10 Years After. That guy used to play guitar so fast, but he would do it in a hyper spastic blues format.
I've been a big fan of Bo Diddley. Just because you listen to that guy play a guitar in 1950 where like there's nobody that came before him. There's Robert Johnson and other people that came before him.
Yeah, sure.
Or Lead Belly, who came before him as well. But like you just hear him starting to get the idea. Or Chuck Berry, where they start to get into like, they're not there yet, but they're on their way to starting to shred. I've always been more on the rhythm side than the guitar side in the sense of like lead guitar. Growing up on Motown, I've always appreciated something that had I like the Animals, or I like Rolling Stones more than I like the Beatles.
You know, on the same
I like that. Like, I don't need to hear a certain sound. I want to hear a certain feeling.
One of the reasons why I like the Stones more than the Beatles is because I like the rawness, more, you know, hyper high energy from the Stones, and you don't really get that as much with the Beatles. The Stones had like a little bit more of a tougher attitude, and even their psychedelic album that came out, Satanic Majesty's Request.
That's it, man. Okay,
that's a brilliant album, man.
I'm a vinyl collector. One of my favorite albums that I'm still trying to, like a holy grail that I got to track down and get. It's like a specific record label with specific label that is on the record. You know, you move it and it like makes 2 different images. I can't remember
lenticular, right?
Yeah, that's it. That run where it's like Beggar's Banquet and their Satanic Majesty's Request and Exile on Main Street. I don't know the exact order, and I'm sure I'm off by 1 or 2, but that run that they had right there is some of the best music you'll ever hear.
Speaking about blues, I got a really, really cool story. My grandmother had an apartment building in a town called Westmont, Illinois. That's where I grew up. I want to say she bought it in like early 70s. Because when I was born in 75, I lived in one of the units with my mom and dad. Muddy Waters bought a house, and it was in my grandma's backyard. You know, there was an alleyway that divided my grandma's apartment and Muddy Waters' house. And my uncles used to talk to him. He wasn't there very much because he was always touring. I don't have any memories myself of Muddy. But then a really good friend of mine, his uncle bought the house. God bless him, but they were like severe hoarders. And I just thought it was so sad that they had Muddy's house. They could turn this into a museum. You know, eventually they moved out, and they invited me over to the house because they knew I was a collector,
right,
and an eBay guy. And they had like all this, like He-Man Trinky Dinks from '83. I just got contacted by the Comic Book Men. They wanted me to go. Isn't that in New Jersey?
Yeah.
They wanted me to, I did this promo video for that. Hello, my name is Cris Macht. I'm 40 years old. I reside and I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. They said, hey, you know what? You can come out here. You can be on the show, but we can't put you up. We can't pay for any travel, and you cannot promote any of your documentaries. And I'm like, what the hell do I want to go out there for then? I bought all this stuff from this hoarded pile. It was vintage video games and vintage iron-ons and Transformer toys. I bought it for like $150, and unfortunately, no Star Wars stuff. That would have been nice to find some vintage Star Wars stuff. And I ended up flipping that on eBay for, you know, maybe a couple grand, which was nice.
I love film, right? There's just such a cool revolution of creators finding new platforms to get their content out. And as someone who's like always wanted to make their own music podcast, we'll say, right? I always wanted to ask someone like you, what gave you the gumption, right? Like what gave you the cojones to start doing this stuff? What gave you that belief that you're like, I'm going to do this?
I thought about it. What fuels me, and this sounds crazy, but what fuels me is a couple drinks and music. And I feel like that gives me my edge. It just pushes me into, and the passion, right? The passion comes from just the love of Star Wars and music and baseball. But, you know, I've really focused on just Star Wars projects, excluding the Walking Dead documentary. The Force Among Us was born out of me being depressed, talking about Star Wars over some pints at an Irish pub, and I started getting really, really fueled up, and I was like, man, this is a great idea. I started getting really excited. I went over to my sister's house the next day because it was me and my sister having this conversation at a pub the night before, and she goes, dude, what do you got in your hand there? I said, this is the outline for the movie. She goes, dude, that was drunk talk. I said, no, that was. I wasn't drunk, first of all. And we were coming up with some really, really great ideas. So, and then once you do one thing, you then realize that you can do it again.
Yeah.
But cool. Like the real fans of the saga, definitely a different animal. I went into it with the confidence, came out of it going, wow, that was a lot different than a documentary. Kind of like with the Machtails, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a recorded conversation, but I want to put in all this B-roll, this video, and photos. That was my big hang-up about the first cut of The Force Among Us is the lack of B-roll. So The Force Among Us director's cut is visually different. You know, it's a lot more photos of what people are talking about. That's kind of the big difference. I just wanted to go back and add something that drove me nuts about it. Frank Yario, he gave me control, but he always told me, he goes, I cannot let you in the editing room. He goes, we've been with you day and night. We know what story you're trying to tell. He goes, but if you're in the editing room,
step away.
this is never going to get finished. And he was right. But then I think I learned a lot from what I wasn't able to do, what I wanted to do. And that desire gave me the cojones for the force within us. So it just kind of snowballs, you know?
Yeah. I've heard you talk about your sister like 1 or 2 times in your movies, and just hearing you on RFR and on here. I am one of 5, like my wife. We're both one of 5. And we're both siblings of all girls. So I have 4 older sisters, all of which in some way or form or another are like my best friend, right? Or my cheerleader, or like my best friend in that sense of like the person that's going to be, that pumps me up or gets me to continue to move forward. Yeah. Was your sister a big influence on you in that same way?
She was, even though I'm older than her, you know.
Well, it doesn't matter, right?
No. And, you know, when I was going through a really, really rough time through my first marriage, I felt really depressed. And I remember going over to her house, and I was living with her and just telling her how dark my mind was at the time. You know, like I was pretty depressed, man. I was on, you know, antidepressants, and I just kind of wanted to check out. And my sister was the one that I felt comfortable telling this to. Yep. And I felt like it was safe to tell her how I felt. And I knew that she would help me get my shit together and get me out of this darkness. She's been a big influence on my life. But after she had her 4th kid, she had twins, right? So she's got the corporate life. She's got 4 kids. There's no time, you know, to spend with her. I'm kind of over that part now. But there was a time where that was really, really hard for me when I didn't have a kid and my sister's life was going in a different direction than mine. I felt like I really missed that, you know, and I kind of tell that story a little bit in The Force Within Us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to film her for the second documentary, but she didn't feel comfortable on film, and I begged her to be on Machtails from the Cantina.
That's the episode, not to be mean, and no pressure on your sister. That's the episode that I feel like has got to happen.
I've been playing music for moons. I would write a song, and I would feel very, very passionate about what I write, and right. I would play it. But, you know, you play a show, you know, once every 3 months, 100 people would show up, and it's gone, right? Like, we recorded soundboard recordings of it, but we never released it. We never recorded stuff that got out to the masses.
Right.
And as a filmmaker, I feel like the world's a little bit more promising for filmmakers to get exposure than my music would have been, if that makes any sense. Do you play?
I grew up learning drums. I was a percussionist in like, you know, middle school, elementary school, high school, stuff like that. But then college, I don't know, I found Paul Simon and Grateful Dead, so I wanted to play guitar. So I know chords, right? You know, I know basic chords. I sit outside and I play guitar, whatever it may be. And it's like the most relaxing thing that I could possibly do.
You need your peaceful time. If it's reading a book, if it's praying, if it's meditating, if it's playing music, you know, you need something to zone out on. Yeah. And, you know, I can see why, because for me too, it's relaxing. Like just go out in the back, sun is setting, have my guitar out there. I always want my daughter to sing. She knows what's out of tune and what's not, right? But she just wants to hear me play, which is great, because I always said, after I stopped playing for a while to film, I said, I'll pick up my guitar again, but it'll be for my daughter. And now, as soon as I stop playing guitar, my daughter goes, Daddy, keep playing. And I'm like, no applause, no nothing. It's like she's like the queen in the court, you know?
Puts the coin at you. Keep going.
Yeah, it's tough having an only child, or you know, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more benefit to it, I believe, than there is, you know, downside. But
you can focus on them.
Yeah, you could focus on them. You know, when I die, nobody's going to fight over what I have left.
Like I was saying, I'm one of 5 with 4 older sisters, and every other weekend is like, when we can and when we're smart about it with, you know, everything going on, because my one sister is a ER nurse, we get the kids all together, right? And they hang out and they play outside, and, you know, it's an important thing that I notice with, like, my daughter specifically, especially right now, is like making those connections, right? And having like that family network.
Yeah.
So, like, when you were talking about like your cousin who you guys kind of didn't talk too much, but then how Star Wars became that linchpin or something like
Yeah.
you guys, that's something that's big in our family, where it's like all the cousins still hang out, and there's like 4 or 5 of them that are around the same age that live in the same area, and like they'll come over and play Mario Kart or whatever it may be, you know. So
yeah, no, it's. I grew up being really, really close to my cousins for a long time, and there was a period where, you know, after my dad passed away, you know, the family got really, things weren't right, things weren't normal, and my mom kind of, you know, split off from the family that we were part of before my dad passed away. We rebuilt it, and after all these years of rebuilding and getting close and, you know, doing everything together, my grandma passed away and the family just fell apart at the seams. And it sucked because I haven't talked to my cousins in 7 years.
It's funny how it's always the matriarchs, man. In my family, if it's my mom and I love her to death, I don't know. They got to invent some sort of serum. She can't die ever. I say she's not allowed to. Right? Like, she's the one person that is that, like, that
holds the family together.
Yeah, the keystone, right? That's one of those things I do love about Star Wars, right? Like, at the end of the day, I love the whole family connection stuff. One of the best moments in Star Wars is when Luke Skywalker throws his lightsaber away, right? In Jedi, because he's just like, I don't care what you do.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
You're my family, and I will do anything for you.
Yeah.
I feel like that's Padme's story.
You're going down a path I can't follow. Come back. I love you.
So I love that whole thing about that like one theme in Star Wars about family, where it's just, that's like the most important thing, where people they can do stupid things, but they can always come home, and you can always find a place where people accept you for who you are and help you get better or help you move forward.
I think another reason why that's very appealing, because it is important, and it's something that we can relate to.
Right.
There's a human element to it that, you know, family and redemption. I mean, isn't that what life is kind of all about?
Amen. Right.
Amen to that.
You find me someone who hasn't lived in a glass house at one point in their life. I think right now we are living through a cultural moment where there is a lot of justification for why people are holding certain people accountable for certain comments or actions or whatever it may be. But there's also, I feel like there's got to be a kind of a respite to what's been going on lately, where it's like everybody is just so on edge. People hated Last Jedi. Then those kind of people kind of like the Rise of Skywalker, but the people who like The Last Jedi, they hated the Rise of Skywalker. So right. It's like, I don't know. Just, do you guys not remember when there were not Star Wars movies? I was 13 years old, we'll say in 1997. I think my Star Wars came from those re-releases, right? Where they would add in some scenes that just, to me, I don't know, didn't make sense. Far be it for me to criticize George Lucas. I have not created a multi-million-dollar, franchise. But it was mostly comic books, the books, and video games. Really, video games more than anything, right? Because video games just in general are big, but like there were some big Star Wars games back in the day, and that was where I was getting most of my lore from.
One of the stories that I kind of forget about, and I haven't really told, in any of the film projects was in '91 when I found the copy of Empire Strikes Back on Betamax. It was a bootleg, right? It kind of was. I described it as a time machine, right?
Right, of course.
There was a video store that we used to walk to that was right by the comic book shop. The old comic book shop. Before that, it was the old iron-on T-shirt shop. The video store had a Nintendo Star Wars game. And I kind of played Star Wars, the video game, before I watched A New Hope. Hang on for one second. Well,
Don't worry, take your time.
You want to say hi to my friend Anthony? Sure. It's my daughter Danielle.
Oh, hi, Danielle. Hey, I heard you just turned 6 years old?
I did.
That is amazing. My daughter just turned 6 in May. Her name is Rosie. She's actually asleep right now.
That's a beautiful name.
Oh, thank you very much.
Go to bed.
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, no. She went to bed after I made her run around outside playing soccer.
All right, I'm going to finish this up. Okay?
Okay.
It's cool that they close in the dark.
It is.
That's really cool. But I was playing, I played through A New Hope story on video game before I watched it on.
Like after finding everything, right?
Yeah, so I went through the movie in the video game format, and then I rewatched the movie that I have not seen in a long time. Because I was a big gamer, and
yeah, same.
the video game was nostalgic, and it was brand new at the time. But it was they had the music in there, and the story was very authentic.
They definitely tried in the mid-'90s to do different mediums, right?
My nephew asked me this yesterday. He's like, what did you think about the sequels? And I said, I liked them. I don't think they captivated me as much, not because of the story. I wasn't jonesing for more Star Wars to fill voids in my life because I'm happily married. I have a daughter. I'm at a very good spot in my life where I don't need to necessarily
focus on it.
The similar escape that I found in the previous projects.
That's actually something that you nailed, and you talk about it earlier where you're like, you fell out of Star Wars and you fall back in. I feel like everyone I've talked to or heard from, even Jimmy Mack recently, who I thought, for me, if you're gonna have that big of a collection or collections like you guys and Sean or whoever, you had to have been doing that for the last 40 years. But it's funny how it has like that period where you do kind of like recede from it, and then you do come back to it, and you get passionate at certain moments and times in your life, and it is a big like escape in a certain way.
I've never hated a Star Wars movie.
Right.
There are certain movies that I like more than others, and then you get the argument like, well, why do people have to rate them? You know what? Who gives a shit? You can do whatever you want with them.
Exactly.
You could rate them, you could love them, you could hate them, whatever. It's like my mom said it best in The Force Within Us. It was actually from her interview from The Force Among Us that we didn't use. But she said, I think Star Wars means something different to every person. And I was like, wow, that's so true. I never even really thought of that. But
it can mean so many different things to people, but it also goes so deep for each person, right? And it's like baseball, right? My dad, he is a hard-nosed person, and he will not talk about the Yankees today because he does not like Yankees post-1999.
No kidding.
He loves the franchise.
Yeah.
But he doesn't agree with Aaron Boone. So, who's the head coach? So,
I know Aaron Boone,
Yeah. Sorry. So, he gets into these divisions where he's like, oh, I can only look at this, but I won't recognize the front part. And I'm just sitting there buying new Yankee jerseys every year going, but this one's a Don Mattingly one, I don't give a shit. Excuse my language, I love the Yankees.
A lot of my Rays friends, they don't like the Yankees. And it's simply just because it's the AL East rivalry, right? I have my reasons why I don't like the Red Sox. I just didn't like their...
All right, hey, listen.
I didn't like their pompous attitudes. I didn't like their arrogance. You know, this was probably like between 2004 and 2011.
Yep.
And it just, they bothered me. Just their appearance, the way they handled things, the way they acted.
Are you a Rays fan and also a Chicago Cubs fan?
I'm both. I pay to watch the Rays. I follow them more religiously. I got into the Rays because, make a long story short, my family was living down there and they introduced me to the team. In 2010, like the Cubs went on like this 4-year losing streak. And the Rays were just so magically amazing. They didn't have any money, and they were really kind of the rebellion against the empire.
Yeah, no, that is it, right? The Yankees are the empire.
But I never hated the Yankees like some of my Rays friends do. And I'd have to say, one of the best, my favorite baseball movie, Billy Crystal's 61 with Roger Maris. I just thought that was amazing. I don't know how the Yankees fans felt about it. But Billy Crystal was a hardcore Yankees fan, so I knew that he was doing it
out of love.
Yes.
Or from a certain place that you actually can talk to it, right?
Yeah, right. But I know Roger Maris was obviously super hated by Yankees fans during that era. But and then, you know, the movie starts with his wife is dying in the hospital, and you know, and then you got Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, and you know, I never really cared for Mark McGwire. And
I don't like him either.
I lost respect for Sammy, and you know, it's just so you tie that story into Roger Maris' story, and you're like, I don't know, man, I love that movie. To kind of backtrack to that, you know, it was kind of like Star Wars means something different to everybody, and baseball means something different to everybody. And then you were saying that your dad kind of sounds like the old school Star Wars fan hating on the sequels, right? It's like, I don't want to talk about the Yankees post, what'd you say, 99, 98?
Yeah, right, exactly. We can all agree, simply, I don't care who you like, Oakland A's to, you know, the Rangers to the Twins to Red Sox, I hate the Astros. I feel like I'm Kylo Ren, right? Like as a Yankee fan, I'm Kylo Ren. The rest of them are Ray. And then the new, or like Palpatine re-emerging is the Astros, right?
Yeah.
Like one guy was like, he was on the Red Sox, he was on the Astros, and wherever he went, he was just a cheater and a POS.
The Astros story was very, very heartbreaking because I went down to that ballpark.
Okay.
I loved the park.
Yeah,
I loved their mascot, Orbit.
Yeah.
I respected the team. Then when they got into the World Series, even when they got into the postseason, I was rooting for them because they never had that before. I didn't root for them last year.
No.
And that was before they were, you know,
exposed,
announced cheaters. But the Rays almost came back and beat them, but eliminated the Rays, and I'm like, I can't root for the Astros, you know. And then I hear that they're cheaters, and I'm like, you know, that was kind of like Padme going, "You're breaking my heart."
You're going down a road I can't go down.
Yeah, like you become the thing that you swore to destroy. It's like, come on, you know. I'm like, how can you cheat like that? I mean,
we might have bought, you know, oh, you beat us in the playoffs last year. Okay, we're gonna buy you this year. Yeah, sure, fine. We're terrible, evil people, but we never cheated. But I was so happy as a Yankee fan to have a new villain be reintroduced.
Right.
Oh, Palpatine's back. Palpatine's back. I'm Kylo Ren. I get redeemed.
Going back to the question about my favorite ball player, that's always hard for me to answer because there's so many good ball players. One that I really enjoyed and I kind of miss. He wasn't on the Cubs or the Rays, but I loved Vladdy Guerrero.
Okay, yeah.
That guy could hit anything. And just his approach was it was sloppy as hell, but he would always put the ball in play. And I remember one time after Star Wars Celebration, me and my mom went to the Vinoy Hotel where the ball players from out of town stay. And I didn't get any sleep at Celebration. And I actually had to call the manager. We were going to the Rays game the next day. And I'm like, you got to move us, man. It's 2 a.m. I can't sleep. They're like, oh, yeah, you know who's next to you? It's Vladimir's Vladimir and his posses. And so they moved us to a completely different floor. And but man, he was good, and I really loved watching James Shields and David Price at their prime. The 1-2 combo pitching duo. That was good stuff. Kevin Kiermaier too from the Rays. That guy could catch anything.
Added some pieces. There's a high fly ball deep to center. Kiermaier to the wall, and he got it. Kiermaier grabbed that one against the wall.
You introduced me to fandom in a certain sense, right? Like, I kind of actually knew about fandom, but from Sherlock Holmes, because I was a big Sherlock Holmes fan. That's a very well-established fandom, right? Where it's like there's a magazine called Baker Street Journal that's been going on since probably like the 50s, right? When I got to your film, to just see that there was like other people like that, that other people are really passionate about this stuff and we're getting together and hearing people talk about like having collections or whatever it may be. It was just really mind-blowing to me that could even exist, right?
I remember in the early 90s, Star Wars was a lonely thing. But I miss those days sometimes.
Solitary.
I missed. Yeah, it was very solitary. I miss those days because, now it's impossible to have Star Wars be a lonely thing because.
You're actually 100% right. Star Wars ruined the internet for me because when I was, 13 years old or whatever it would be and seeing Phantom Menace, I walked out there being like, are you shitting me? That is the best thing I've seen since A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, and definitely Empire Strikes Back. This is new Star Wars? This is amazing.
Yeah.
And I went home and I went, type on my computer, like, hey, how who else loves this movie? That's a new word. You're doing what with you hate the movie so much? Like, when I went on the internet after watching The Phantom Menace, someone who loved it, you just see all this like negativity that comes out from it, and you're just like, holy crap, that's not what I experienced.
I enjoyed the movie, but it did not click with me. I felt it was such a complicated story for the way that I think anyway. And I saw the movie in the theater 30 times. And
like a true Star Wars fan, I hate this. Drove me nuts, so I watched it 500 times in a row.
Yeah, right. So when I came to like my 12th showing, my 12th screening, I was like, "Oh, I get it now."
Yeah.
I was a little slow, I guess.
By the time I got through like high school and college, when Revenge of the Sith would eventually come out, I don't know. I kind of lost that like buy-in. That romanticism where I was like, I could just let go. And then when The Force Awakens comes out, it was aligned with my daughter being born.
Yeah,
so
right.
Like there was something about that where I was like,
a lot of fans kind of complained about female leads in the new Star Wars movies. And for me, I was like, you know what? I have a daughter. I don't have a son. I'm like, again, I've asked this question before, but I'm like, am I following Star Wars or is Star Wars following me? I'm like,
it's bigger than us and we're just part of it. And I'm just happy to be a part of it in that sense, right?
Yeah. Amen to that, man. It's been an important, very important part of my life. I told my nephew the other day too, I said, I mentioned this in The Force Within Us in the very, very opening. If my dad would have never died when I was 7 years old, I don't think I would be a fan like I am today. I might be like my wife's brother. He likes it. He thinks it's cool, but it's not part of his life. Star Wars was a father figure because I didn't have one. So when I was a teenager rediscovering Star Wars, I felt like it was putting me on track and answering questions that I wasn't answering questions personally.
But it helped guide you, right?
It helped guide me because I couldn't talk to anybody about my dad's death. It was hidden, very much like the story of Darth Vader was hidden from Luke. It was very, very, very similar to that. And I'm happy with the way my life had turned out. And I thank Star Wars for making that happen.
Star Wars for me was a big thing when I was about 14 years old and I got staph infection and cellulitis in my left leg. And I was in the hospital for about like a month, 2 months, where I almost, lost my leg in that sense. And it's that sort of disease or like blood disease where it spreads very rapidly. And I suddenly went from wrestling to being in a hospital in a span of like 24 hours at the most. And they happened to have an Xbox 360 in that hospital. And on that hospital Xbox 360, they had the Knights of the Old Republic video game.
Yeah.
That thing, man. Talk about what you were just saying. It gives you hope. It gives you direction. It gives you something to focus on. When there's all this noise and negativity in the world, somehow, whether it's a book or a video game or a movie, Star Wars just is able to give you that hope. I don't care who you are, what you look like, what you identify as. We're all Luke looking out at those twin suns, right? And that is like such a special moment where you can be bigger than what you are, right? Like you can do more. There's more out there than you feel very sequestered right now. You feel really pent up. There is another tomorrow.
When Lucas did that one scene, I don't think he knew what it was going to become years later. I don't think he filmed that and said, you know what, this is going to be the scene that everybody's going to be talking about 40 years later. When you asked me, like, how did I get the balls to kind of move forward?
Yeah, say balls. I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay, you got to have the balls to do it. But then you got to have, okay, what keeps you going? And I think what really keeps me going is the people that love what I do. It's the people like yourself and the people that, supported the project. It's the people that want to watch the show. It's the people that give a thumbs up. It's the people that email me on the side and say, wow, man, I really enjoy what you do. It's great. Thanks for doing what you do. I say, wow, I didn't really expect anybody to thank me for this, So it's people, man, that have the passion for what I do that keeps me going,
What's the one weird album or band that you wouldn't expect people to hear from you? Like for me, Ed Sheeran. Any of my friends ever caught me listening to Ed Sheeran, they'd be like, are you okay? Is the lockdown getting to you? What is the one thing that you listen to right now or listening to that's out of your normal?
I would say the Frozen soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like there's times where I tell Alexa to put on the Frozen 2 soundtrack because it's my daughter's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't ask for it. I do. I had a little bit of a hang up with Pearl Jam. I mean, I like Pearl Jam. Their first album is definitely my favorite. It was part of that whole Seattle movement in the early 90s. But I had Pearl Jam radio on XM radio the other day. It was on my daughter's birthday. Eddie Vedder is playing the song Daughter. He goes into Let It Go. This is the coolest fucking thing I've ever heard Eddie Vedder do, man. So I would say Frozen 2 is the soundtrack, and Let It Go is from Frozen 1, but that's probably the thing that people don't expect me to listen to, But I don't necessarily feel like it's necessarily a guilty pleasure.
Not guilty. I don't feel guilty about listening to Ed Sheeran.
It's kind of like if your wife doesn't like Star Wars, but if you guys go out on a date and she's like, hey, let's go see a Star Wars movie, if there's one playing in the theater. It's about sharing the passion that your wife, your daughter, your son, your brother, your sister has, and you just want to be on their level.
Right.
You want to share something with them, and it's a very non-selfish thing to do. You know, you have to. My wife wasn't into baseball before she met me, but she knows I love baseball, so she likes watching the game.
My wife all of a sudden is really into the Yankees because it's the only live like television that's happening. She's like, "Yo, the Yankees are on. Do you want to watch the Yankees?" But the other thing is, on the flip side, there's a reason why I'm really heavily invested into the Great British Baking Contest. I think it's called, right? Where it's like, it's a British reality TV show about baking. Well, my wife's into it, so I am super into it. And I swear to God, there are 3 people I'm rooting for. If they don't make it, oh, I'm gonna go so hard on those message boards. Oh, I don't like it. That Twitter feed is done for. I'm starting to miss being on a New York subway and seeing someone who is still tweaking out from the night before in the back corner, where I'm like, oh, well, you had fun last night.
Right.
I was reading Peppa Pig to my daughter, but I bet you had a better time.
I find myself the only Chicagoan that loves New York more than my own city.
I like Chicago, though, a lot. But when I walk through certain areas of Chicago, I feel I understand it, right? Like, it makes sense to me because it's very... It feels like the same sort of type of city that certain parts of New York still feel like.
I love the subway system. It reminds me of the Tube in London. It's so easy to get around. I love the attitudes in New York. Before I went to New York, I felt like there was this, oh, people from New York are not very nice. Oh, New York is very expensive. New York is no more expensive than Chicago. 9/11 not only changed the United States, but it changed New Yorkers big time. When I went to New York after September 11th had happened, I felt like all the stereotypes and all the negativity about New Yorkers just went right out the window, and none of it was true. None of it was true. I mean, people were just down to earth. They were hardworking people, white collar and blue collar. I love the pace of this city. I love the fact that it just stretches into one neighborhood after another. Chicago is kind of spread out. It's like, you don't walk from neighborhood to neighborhood. You can't do that. It's too spread out.
There is a certain history to New York that I just really appreciate, where, like you're saying, like, you do have all these different cultures smashing up against each other, but at the same point, you do also have distinct areas, right, where it's like Brooklyn versus the Village versus Upper West Side, right, like versus Harlem.
You know, I love San Francisco for the music history. You know, after Bill Graham ran the Fillmore in San Francisco, you know, he ran it in New York. So there's that music history, especially with jazz legends. Huge jazz scene in New York. And Jim Henson, too, man. I mean, New York was his home base. My daughter thinks that Sesame Street is in New York City. Jim Henson and George Lucas, definitely 2 pioneers, and I love seeing those photos of Jim Henson and George Lucas together. I mean, I just think...
What a star-crossed, right? Like, where 2 amazing people came together.
It's like seeing a photo of Jimi Hendrix next to Janis Joplin. You know, it's like 2 legends together in the same room. I'm out of my drink.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let me plug this for Mark.
Oh, Angel's Envy. Yes, I know this whiskey.
Do a review, Mark.
So
Go.
Cool, man. Hey, nice meeting you. Thank you for the support, man. I look forward to chatting with you again, and thank you guys for joining us. We will see you next time on Machtails from the Cantina.
You can take Star Wars with you. It goes wherever you go.